Hi. I'm hoping this works, you guys. Um, this is literally my first time ever doing an Instagram live. Is it obvious? Okay, we're doing it. Thank you guys for hopping on if you're watching or if you're watching the. Oh, hi, and this is Monique.
Hi.
It's so nice having another person on this. It's terrifying being
Yeah.
out there by myself.
You're like, I have to talk to
Absolutely
people.
terrifying. How are
Hey,
you?
I'm good. How are
Happy Earth
you?
Day.
I know, it's so good. I'm wearing my Earth Day Don't Mess with My Mom shirt.
Oh,
You
I like
know.
that. I'm wearing kind of like a more animal. I like how I'm just bringing my breasts into
Yeah,
frame.
that's
That's
I
that's
mean,
super.
yeah.
Super class act.
I mean, who puts the design right there though, actually? You
It's true.
know?
It's the most
Why?
noticeable right there. We
Patriarchy
were
happens
saying
again.
earlier, that that every month should be Earth Month and every day should be Earth Day. But here we are, finally getting a little focus on the planet, and I'm so happy to sit down and talk to you.
Yeah. I know.
So you
I love any excuse to talk about composting, but I would talk about it all day, every day. You know, people need to be composting right away. So I'm happy to be, sharing this day with you, though.
So you are the founder of Compostable LA. So
Hmm.
tell I mean everybody should know about it. I mean sure I'm hoping everybody knows about composting, but tell people like about you and this company you created and what you guys do and let us in on what you do.
Yeah. So, Compostable LA is a compost pickup service. We come to your house, we leave you a clean 4 gallon bin that you then fill up with your food waste, your coffee grounds, your carrot tops, your banana peels. And then once a week or every other week, you're just going to leave that outside your front door and we're going to collect your full bin, leave you with a clean empty bin, and then we do all the rest. You know, all you have to do is sort. All the composting process is handled behind the scenes. So instead of putting that banana peel in a trash can, you're going to put it in a compost bucket instead.
Great. And when did you start? Is this kind of a new company for you? Like, I remember reading on your website that it was a recent.
Yeah, the company was founded in June 2019.
Right.
And it was just me for a little while. And now our team, I think there's 6 of us. So it's, in a year and a half, it's growing a lot. But I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, like, this has been really wildly well received. Okay. Yeah.
Well, it's like I feel like there is certainly like a Californian mentality that is
Yeah.
ripe for this type of business. But for those people who don't live in California, maybe we can talk a little bit about like the composting process, and maybe we can give them some ideas of like how to do it in your home. Because like I use your company, but I also have this bin as well, and it's been for me personally like such a journey
Yeah.
because I've failed so many
Yep.
times,
Yep.
like to just like really bad fails. And what I've learned through having your system in place and then also having my own is just how much food, first of all, we waste, unfortunately, but
Mm-hmm.
also just food, like you said, like banana peels, coffee grounds, all these things that you're not
Yeah.
actually consuming.
Yeah.
Um, how much of that could potentially go into landfills. And I think, like, I'll speak for myself. Like, before I sort of educated myself on composting, I think I don't know if you've heard this too, but like I feel we as humans go, oh, we're putting that in the trash. Yes, it's going to a landfill, but it will break down super easily. And I think that that's a real misconception.
Right. That's
And
false.
that's false.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can talk just a little bit about the general process and how people can do that at home and educate us a little bit if you would.
Yeah. So I think big thing is composting is basically organic recycling. So that's the easiest way to break this down. And, our landfills are full of organic material that never breaks down. In a landfill, when you put your banana peel in a landfill, it kind of slowly mummifies while releasing methane, which is more potent than carbon dioxide. So if you instead compost that, it becomes healthy soil that you can use to grow your gardens and all that. And there's lots of different ways to compost. You can do it yourself at home, like you're doing, um, with a tumbler in the backyard or a worm bin or bokashi, or you can drop it off somewhere like your local farmer's market or community garden, or you can hire a pickup service like ours. And so it's so wildly impactful, and there's so many ways to access it that, I'm hoping people feel a little bit empowered to take that one step towards doing it.
So if somebody was, like what I think happens a lot of times is people live in apartment buildings and they don't have a
Yeah.
yard and they don't have like a garden that they can like put it back to use.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's certainly like having community gardens. There's in every, I mean, speaking just for the American Canadian point of view, there are community gardens that you can contribute to.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's also ways, like I know people who live in New York City who have it on their fire escapes. So there is like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge tumbler. It's really
Right.
about, I think like what composting has done for me is also like monitor how much waste I am producing and also
Yeah.
keeping an eye on that and finding ways to reduce.
Right, right. Yeah, once you put it in a separate bin and in that bin is just food scraps, you kind of are like, oh, whoa, how much money am I throwing away? Just from like an economical point of view. But also then you're seeing how much one household produces. And you just have a different relationship with your waste when you can look at it. Just kind of condensed into that one product. Imagine if you separated all your waste and you could just see exactly how much plastic you produce, or paper or cardboard. And that's kind of what composting is doing. It's showing you exactly how much food waste you're producing. And I agree, there's lots of different ways. Like apartments don't have to stop you. I mean, there's an app called Share Waste, and there's another app called Make Soil. And those connect you with neighbors that are composting in their backyard. And so maybe you're just bringing it over your neighbor's house and then they use it in their garden. Maybe you don't want any back. Maybe you're bringing it to an urban farm and they're using it to grow produce that they sell at the farmer's market. And so there's lots of different ways that if you live in an apartment, or you have a worm bin on your patio and you use that soil for the million houseplants that you have, because, that's the life many of us lead. We just like have plant babies. So yeah, there's lots of different ways.
Can we talk a little bit about about community composting and big business composting and sort of get into that, and also just like food deserts and sort of the cycle of our food system that is currently in place?
Yeah, I've been following your Instagram, and I know that you're not one to shy away from the talk of environmental justice and racial justice. And so that actually ties into composting as well. So there's two main types of composters. There's community-based composters and then maybe municipal haulers. And if you look solely at diversion, like how much am I diverting from a landfill, then yeah, municipal haulers have a leg up because they're just trucking this material out. They have the big trucks so they can handle that. But then if you start coming into other factors, considering other factors, like, well, what's happening to that material? What communities are housing the anaerobic digesters or the sorting facilities that these are trucking out to? Like, are these disenfranchised communities? Also, like if they're trucking back and forth, all that pollution that's going there. And so the questions become different. Some of the major municipal haulers are taking your food waste and turning it into biomethane to fuel their trucks, which is great because then their trucks are zero waste. But so much of the power of composting comes from healthy soil. So if you're not making healthy soil out of that food waste, then you're losing half of the picture. So community composters keep everything in the community that produces that food waste. So our food waste that we collect from our members is brought to local urban farms, is turned into soil on those local urban farms, and then redistributed back to the community. So you know exactly what's happening. You can visit it, you can see it, you can connect with it, you can take some home. And then we're also generating that healthy soil, and we can talk a lot about healthy soil benefits. But that is big into food sovereignty, because if you want to grow your own foods, having healthy soil is so important,
Mm.
and it's so expensive. So if you can have access to free, healthy soil, then a lot of these communities can become self-reliant on the food system that they create with that. And then they compost it and create more soil to grow their food in. So it's really this complex, intricate system when you talk about community composting, because not only are we diverting, we're creating the soil, we're supporting the community, keeping everything local. So I encourage people to start looking past just diversion, just, and that's the same with the recycling market. Just it's no longer, I no longer have it, it's been trucked somewhere else, and more ask the questions of, what are these external consequences? What, with plastic recycling, China and a lot of Southeast Asia is the one that's had to bear the brunt of that waste. And so there are always communities that are bearing the brunt of the decisions we make, or they're bearing the positive benefits of the decisions we make.
It's always shocking to me when you hear that uh, in some communities it's cheaper to go to a fast food chain and
Yeah.
like buy a full meal, burger, fries, a milkshake for
Yeah.
less than fresh produce at the
Yeah.
grocery store. And that sort of that's attached to kind of what you're talking about, which is if you don't have access to the right tools to grow your own food, you just
Right.
can't. I mean, I've had a very like small experience in my own garden where I'm like, everything keeps dying. Why does
Yeah.
everything keep dying? And it is so interesting that it really does come down to the soil.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough where I can go and I can buy,
High
the
quality.
bag of compost. If my compost, I mean, then I started composting and it's been much better. But you have the funds to do that. But if you're trying to do it yourself, you're right. It's like it's nearly impossible.
Making mistakes is a privilege, that
Yes.
we get to experience. And it's part of gardening. Like you're going to kill plants, but if you had that one plant in that one shot, because soil is so expensive and plants can be expensive, and you killed them, instead of feeling like, oh, well, that's, I learned my lesson, it's like, well, I can't do this anymore. And
Yeah.
so supporting local composting and access to those resources is so important. And figuring out companies that are doing that work, not just taking your material away, which is important because we talked about how landfills, create methane, but are then redistributing, because food waste is a resource. So that it should be treated like a resource. And the soil it creates is a huge resource, and it should be treated as such. And I keep alluding to the healthy benefits of soil, so I should probably comment a little bit on that. Landfills is one topic. Landfills is a finite resource. And if we fill them up with an organic material that can be recycled, we're wasting that resource, especially if it's creating methane. So what instead we can do is compost to create healthy soil. And healthy soil, it's a little hard to believe. It sequesters carbon, so it takes carbon dioxide out of the air where it's harmful and puts it in the ground where it's useful to plants. It serves as a water sponge, so it can hold 10 times its own weight in water. So that helps with droughts here in Southern California. It serves as a stormwater filter. So if stormwater hits the ground, is absorbed into that carbon-rich soil, it's going to be cleaned from its pollutants. Nutrient-dense food can only be grown in nutrient-dense soil. So that our bodies and the stuff we're putting in them is really directly connected to the soil. And it goes on and on and on, less reliance on chemical fertilizers, which are causing dead zones in the ocean, So it's like the picture becomes so much more beautifully diverse when you start looking at soil.
Um, I could talk about soil all day.
I know, I'm a little bit
Are we
upset now.
total
I was like, where
nerds?
do I cut
Are we
this? I
total
should,
nerds?
yeah, a little bit. Like most people don't consider soil because they're like, it's dirt.
But it is, it's
It's,
so interesting because it's such a foundation. Like
yeah,
it is such the foundation to so many other things. And hearing you talk about methane emissions and all of these things that you think that it's like this small little thing that you are doing at home, and it only really helps and affects you. But if
Yeah.
it's like we're all doing it, it can make a huge difference.
Right. Like
Um,
if you look in and you like, hey, I can grow my own food, that's great for you. But when you go higher picture, like you were saying, it has this wild impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So
yeah,
that's a more like global picture. So it really can connect with both the individual hyper local and this global view.
great. So if somebody is living in Los Angeles, how do they, I mean, we're on Instagram. They go to your Instagram page. There is a
Yeah.
lovely website, tons of information. I am a member, and I love it because it's truly so easy. And if you have kids, it's also really helpful too
Yeah.
because it's a much easier collection process, and they feel like very excited every time they put something in the bin. They're like, it's a cheers. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then also you shared with me there is a website called www.litterless.com, which is a website people can go on that website and find local communities, local gardens that they can compost at or get compostable soil from, and kind of maybe hopefully find one in their area.
Yeah.
Um,
There's these services all across the US. And all across the world, really, but I'm mainly talking to the US right now. And so
yeah.
litterlist.com will show you what exists in your area. And so maybe there's a farmer's market, maybe there's a service, maybe there's a drop off, and litterlist will show you that.
There are questions. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to
Yay!
look at them, and maybe there'll be some good questions. Should we see?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go to questions that are pertaining to our conversation, you guys. So let's just keep it. Okay, one of the questions is, do you recommend less waste packaging? I think that's an absolute yes.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah.
One comment I'll make on that is, as we've learned that the recycling market has gotten bombarded, and only 9% of our plastic is actually recycled. A lot of people have turned to compostable materials to
Mhm.
try and make up for that. But now they're overly relying on the compostable market because of their dislike for the recycling plastic market. So, and we're having different problems with that. So my number one recommendation is reusables,
Right.
reusables, please, because no matter what recycling system you're trying to use, issues can occur.
Now, with stuff that's like that, like I thought I finally found compostable coffee pods,
Yeah.
and I put them in my compost, and I don't know like how long that takes to break down. Is there a longer process for
Yeah.
products that are branded compostable? Like, does it work? I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to ask
it
you.
is a longer process. So there's these things called bioplastics, which is, made out of like cornstarch or, but it looks and feels like plastic. And those can take quite a long time in industrial level facilities to break down, which is why we tend not to accept them. There's some that are home compostable, and those might be a little bit better. But that's, and I could give a whole talk about bioplastics. That's a long conversation. But yeah, it really varies. Most of them will say compostable in an industrial facility, and there's not that many of those around quite yet. So there are some for sure, but they're not as widely acceptable. So if you're buying something that's a bioplastic or a PLA, you want to make sure at least that it has that home compostable, so it might break down more quickly.
It does. It's been fascinating the last couple of years in learning about just the plastics industry, and just it's just, I mean, it's terrifying. It's really
Yeah,
terrifying. And
yeah.
it's and I feel so grateful to live in a place where I have access to stores that you like bring in your jars, and a whole,
I know.
um can people here volunteer for you, or do you have any like uh, places that they can go to help you with your job? I know that you guys accept volunteers
Yeah.
either at farms or at your company.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're working to become a B Corp. So we're not a nonprofit,
Hmm.
which means I don't feel comfortable taking volunteers because, you know, if you're working for me as a not a nonprofit, you should be paid. That seems only fair. But that being said, we have our nonprofit partner, the people that handle all the composting process is LA Compost. You can find them at LA Compost, and they desperately need volunteers to help process the piles, and they have hours during the week on the weekend. So if you're looking to get your hands dirty here in LA, please reach out to them and look into volunteer opportunities to process those piles.
Awesome. Well, I could talk about this all day. I
Yeah,
feel like we probably talked about it enough to get people interested and not bored yet.
yeah. Please,
um,
please compost, everyone.
Please compost. Please be a good human. Please be a
Yeah,
kind human. Please be
yeah.
kind to each other. Be kind to the earth. There's so many different ways, like we said, at litterlist.com, or check out Compost for LA on Instagram and their website. Their website is also super informative, I found too, just in
Oh,
terms of
good.
like learning what you can and can't, and dealing with that process. So
Oh,
thank you
good.
so much.
Thanks, man. Happy
It was
Earth
so nice to
Day.
like meet you
I
and
know.
chat with you. And I'm gonna probably just contact you all the time and like probably come down there myself soon. So
Do it. Make it happen.
yeah.
You know,
Oh,
I'm here. Any questions you have that help overcome barriers to composting, you or your community, please reach out, DM us, and you know, we're here. We're here to chat. Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much, and thanks
Thanks.
everybody for watching. I hope it all worked.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Bye.